Okay, y'all. In my last video about my police involved shooting, I commented on how my intention at that scene had been to wait for other officers, but of course, that went down the way it went down and it couldn't be helped. But as I also said, there were a couple of other times that I've shown up by myself initially and stuff was already hitting the fan and I had no choice but to act. And I'm going to regale you with a tale of one of those occasions in particular because this was my very first Signal 13, meaning on me. This was the latter half of December 2008. I didn't even have a month on the street. It was the wee hours of the morning, and I was driving eastbound down Moravia Road, approaching Bel Air, and I remember where I was because I was about 30 seconds from where this call came out, which was at the Moravia Park Apartments, I think they were called. And they were on Moravia, just east of Bel Air Road. It was a call for some type of domestic. I can't remember if it was an assault or dispute, but whatever, it was a domestic. I got there, like I said, within about 30 seconds. And when I pulled up and looked through the door into the building, I saw a man and a woman at the top of a flight of stairs arguing, and the man pushed the woman down the stairs. Luckily, she didn't fall forward or tumble. She kind of slid down halfway on her backside, basically, because if she had fallen the wrong way, that could have broken her neck, if not killed her. But she popped right back up and they went right back to arguing. Clearly, I had just witnessed an aggravated assault and had an in progress heated domestic, so I had to act even though I was the only officer on scene at the moment. And from what I saw, the guy was definitely 1030, or to use non BPD jargon, he needed some arresting. I asked for a 1016, aka backup, and I went into the building and up to their apartment to quell matters. The problem was being very new, very green, and quite frankly, very naive. I took nary a defensive tool off my belt. I just figured verbal judo would suffice and I would talk him down peacefully. So I went in the apartment and I was like, "Sir, you're under arrest." And I told him to turn around, and he actually did. And I managed to get one cuff on his right wrist, but then he started bucking on me. And he had a stocky, muscular frame, so I couldn't control him, and I certainly couldn't get a hold of his other wrist to handcuff it. He wouldn't let me. So at that point, I asked for units again. And of course, dispatchers can hear in your tone if you're in trouble, and they dropped a 13. To the suspect's credit, if he wanted to hurt me, he could have. He could have turned around and knocked the hell out of me anytime he wanted to. But he never hit me or tried to. He was just definitely resisting the hell out of letting me get his second wrist cuffed. But then things took a turn for the worst when Mrs. Dum Dum, who he just pushed down some steps and could have killed, and that's why I call her that, she grabbed my arm and pulled me off of him. She was standing by her man, I guess. I lost my grip on him completely when she did that, and that's when he took off running out of the apartment with my cuff on. So the next thing I knew, I was flying down a flight of steps, now in a foot chase, and I asked again for more units, and then there was another 13. He ran out of the building, and we ran around the inner circle. And quite frankly, because he was turning corners, I would start slowing down when I got to them because I was afraid he might stand around one of them out of sight and then sneak me with a hit when I got to it. So by the time I got all the way around the building back to the front side, I lost him. And I was like, screw it. Units had started showing up by then, and I put out the description. And so I just went back to the apartment to tend to the victim. They did end up finding him very shortly. He had crawled under a car, so he did get arrested. And apparently, and I wasn't privy to this because I was inside with the victim, he was cursing out a female officer on scene for giving him a traffic ticket. Funnily enough, that person that gave him that ticket was me. I had no idea that this was the same person until later, but 2 or 3 weeks before this incident, I had stopped him on a car stop I want to say on like Bowley's Lane, and he was driving by himself with a learner's permit, which is a moving violation because you have to have a person with a valid driver's license in the vehicle with you if you only have a learner's permit. So I hit him with that ticket. The officer he was cursing out looked similar to me in that we were both tall, light-skinned, leaner girls. So he directed a lot of vitriol towards her, thinking that she had given him that ticket when it wasn't her. It was me. In any case, I took care of the investigation as it related to the aggravated assault, and the suspect ended up taking a trip to the hospital for whatever reason. When the scene was clearing up and I was back outside, I made a check of my pockets and my equipment to make sure I had everything since I had gotten into that struggle. And I noticed my phone wasn't in my winter coat pocket where I usually had it. My personal phone. It wasn't anywhere on me. I figured it might have fallen out during a scuffle, so I told my OIC, I think it's in the apartment, and we went and rang the bell. The girl answered, and she literally had my phone in her hand when she did, and she held it up because she figured that's what I was looking for, and I nodded, and she came down and gave it to me. That's going to be a very important detail in a moment, so keep that in mind. Then we cleared the scene, and I went and processed the arrest and went home. That night, I was headed back to work, literally driving on 95 North from Columbia, where I lived at the time, and my friend, 401, called me. And from what he said, it seems that the suspect, while he was at the hospital, started talking trash about me to the officer on the detail, claiming that he and I knew each other personally and had messed around, and he could prove it because he had nude pictures of me in his home. And I'm not sure if he said this exactly or this was just conjecture that officers kind of ran with on their own, but the going rumor was that I had showed up to his place and found another girl there, and I locked him up because I was mad he was with another woman. And because of what he said about this alleged evidence in his phone, some officers responded to the apartment sometime during that day to try to locate this phone. They ended up talking to the girlfriend, and she said something along the lines of, "Oh, I already gave her the phone." She thought they were referring to my phone that she had given me back before I left the scene the night before. They took that to mean that I had gone back to the apartment after the fact to retrieve a phone that would have the evidence of me and this fool's romance, and thus would prove that I had locked him up out of spite or something. So basically, it was a grand misunderstanding from the officers' end, since they didn't know what she actually meant when she said that. And it did make me look suspicious from their viewpoint, understandably. So when I explained to Daryl that I did not know this man personally and have certainly never been involved with him, he pressed me about this phone thing. He was like, "But did you go there and get a phone?" And I said, "Daryl, I got my own phone that fell out of my pocket when I was in the apartment wrestling around with this guy. I got it back from her before I left the scene. So-and-so," meaning the OIC, "was with me. That is what she meant." He was like, "Oh, that makes sense now. Yes." When I got to work, my lieutenant said something along the lines about how they were prepared to suspend me over that. Gee, I'm glad that any cockamamie tale and a rusty told that made no sense could have gotten me suspended. How did I just show up at his place randomly? There was a call that was dispatched to that location. Anyway, so that's the story of my first Signal 13 and how I could have easily gotten the crap kicked out of me, but didn't. And then I could have gotten suspended over blatant lies, but luckily that didn't happen either. Anyway, until next time. Be safe, y'all.